Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. Now today we are going to be taking a look at Shuri and more importantly her damage output pre and post buff with and without synergies. So obviously pre-buff Shuri was a bad champion objectively. She was just too slow and the shocks weren't potent enough. The ramp up took too long to a point where it would only be useful in like Labyrinth or Abyss, but we have better champions for that. And in any short to medium content, she just wasn't up to par. Now, her shocks have been made much more potent, but also the shock duration have been slightly increased, which actually results in less damage overall. If you recall Iron Man Infinity War buff, it's kind of like the same thing where they did increase her shock duration slightly, but that does result in, slightly less potent shocks. And then obviously the potency of her shocks is basically doubled, max stacks is halved, but her max ramp up now with this change is also slightly lower. However, you can get there much quicker. And perhaps the most important thing is that level 1 now also refreshes your shocks, which is actually super helpful and just lets her be used much more straightforward and much less stressful. So let's get to it. I'm going to be using my rank 3 660 Shuri. Sig level is not too important for the champion. At the very least, it's absolutely relevant for the damage output. And we all remember how Shuri played. If we do not, very simple. So you do want to parry to get your charges, parry your block hits, and then on every hit you inflict a very weak shock to your opponent. And the entire goal of this is then drop your first level 1, which is going to give you these precisions. And once you gain, you can drop a heavy attack now, convert your regular shocks into passive critical shocks, and then you kind of either rinse and repeat or get up to level 2 and start building up your shocks. Your level 2 gives you an active shock for each passive shock that you have already. So level 2 kind of like lets you ramp up even further. Like at this point, I'm going to be gaining 12 shocks there from that, and obviously I get to refresh everything. And now that we have 31 shocks active, I'm going to be going to my level 1, which is going to give me even more precision passives, and so on and so forth. Obviously, Shuri, as we can see, lots of debuffs, lots of passives, not a lot of damage. So with the third of her ramp up, basically she's only dealing like 1000 something per tick, and it has already been substantial amount of time in this match here. So here I do want to land my heavy with my untouchable. I do now have 36 shocks, and they are refreshed. I'm going to be going for level 2, gain a whole bunch of active shocks. And this is more or less how she ramped up, and we can see that 86 hits landed, and Winter Soldier is still at 2/3 of his health, nearly at 70%. That said, however, now that the ramp up is done, the damage is much more respectable. At this point, we have 36 passives, which we're going to change right here in a second, because we get lots of precisions that can also grant us guaranteed crits. But we got 84, which basically doubles our shock damage, and that is how this fight now finishes out. All in all, drop a big level 3 because I had a ton of shocks that deals 115k damage. And we don't even go for like a full ramp, but this is about as good as I could do this fight. So it was 2 minutes and 46 seconds. Now, obviously here is Shuri, end of the Winter Soldier fight, once she's synergized up. And when you do synergize, she has 2 synergies that increase the shock potency, and that plays a relatively major role. Also, guaranteed crit synergy from the start that lets her ramp up slightly quicker. And here we can see that shock damage is obviously more potent than it was. And this fight duration with her synergy team active fully is quicker. It's 218. Still nothing great though. Still nothing great at all. And here I lost part of my clip, but I also did the Deadpool fight, which was basically 90 seconds, 93 seconds, I believe. And then against Venom the Duck, without any synergies, with class disadvantage, pre-buff, this fight actually ended up taking... Can you guess how long it was? 2 minutes. So that's obviously far, far too slow. Now we have installed the update. You can see that now all special attacks on hit refresh any active shock effects, which is super important, which makes her level 1 much more powerful, potent. And then obviously the changes to her shock potency. So this first one was 246. And remember, we, basically almost ramped up to the full, or didn't even quite get there. Now the start of the fight is obviously pretty much the same. The cooler thing here is that I do not need to worry about being late and weaving in a heavy attack before I activate my level 1, which automatically is super helpful because I don't have to weave in my heavy, which means I can actually land 20 basic hits, and from the get-go I can gain more precision. I think I made a small mistake there, but you can get 18 passive shocks, and these ones are already dealing like 1k damage, so that's, much, much more decent. Now here, arguably I didn't even need to throw that level 1. Perhaps it would have been better if I got level 2. And now I am obviously making some small mistakes there. Wait, is this the fight that I intended to? Yeah, this was the first fight where I fought like garbage, but it was useful to point out that now her max shock amount at rank 3 is basically 3.2k. So we are restarting. So that was a small whoopsie fight there, but we're gonna get to it, and the start is the same. Basically, you want to go for 4 full combos this time around, and you do not have to throw that heavy attack to refresh your shocks anymore. You can go straight up into your level 1, and because you can get 20 shocks, you will be gaining more precisions. So we got like 18 precisions. Previously, pre-buff, we could only get 12 precisions max with our first level 1. So that automatically lets her ramp up quicker. And at this point, we are just smacking in some more shock debuffs. I am going to be throwing another level 1, and this one is going to give me 12 precisions, but I'm going to be converting this immediately right here, right now. Well, once Winter Soldier lets me. So we're going to convert our... we're getting up to 28 passive shocks now, and at this point, we're going to drop a level 2. Keep in mind that now the max stacks of shocks that I can place is 50 altogether. So I'm much closer to actual max ramp up already, and this is significantly earlier in the fight. And now the damage over time is, kicking in much more potent, much earlier, which is great news for shorter fights. And now I'm going to be dropping my level 1, and because I do not need as many passive shock conversions now, I will actually be able to kind of use these prowesses as guaranteed crits. So that will improve my basic hit damage as well. And it's not the greatest, but still it is definite damage increase overall. So here I'm gonna drop my heavy, convert last remaining shocks. So passive shocks are at max ramp up now, and I'm just landing in critical hits. And we can see that he is absolutely melting at this point already because we're basically at max ramp up. Those regular shocks do not do too much. They do not matter too much. So we're just gonna refresh this again here, and I think do I just let him expire by himself there? Drop one heavy attack, and this is going for 2 minutes 12. So we shaved off over half a minute in this longer type of fight. Obviously, the best part of this is that we are actually ramping up quicker. Now, when we do synergize her, obviously she starts even faster. And we're actually, in this one, will manage to squeeze in a level 3 and go for a decent level 3 damage. So here we can see that we relatively quickly got to 50 passive shocks, thanks to those extra 10 passives that we get at the beginning. And from a Tomb synergy, I believe. And this time around, with the synergy team, I'll actually manage to get to my level 3 and drop that. And that will let me finish this fight in somewhat even better time. So here I go, level 3, he's at 19% health. 19% health is approximately 100k, and I actually did 99k as a burst of damage. So with the synergy team, she went from 214, I believe, to 138. Obviously, the most important is how she does without the synergy team. And now we're going to be pulling her up against the Deadpool. And this is obviously relatively lower health pool Battlegrounds matchup, but at the same time, I am using a rank 3, not like a rank 4 champions that, are used in these showcases most often. And here again, the same playstyle. This Deadpool's unfortunately somewhat uncooperative, but one of the cool things about Shuri that, obviously before didn't really matter much is the fact that she inflicts a ton of debuffs, which means synergizes extremely well with Despair and Inequity Masteries to mitigate chip damage. But the plan was the same there. I basically just dropped my first level 1, then converted however many shocks I could to passives. Now, for this fight, I actually dropped another level 1 and convert the remaining ones to passives. Now I'm going to go ahead and inflict some actual shock debuffs to mitigate whatever region he's going to be getting. And now in a shorter fight, well, the fight's over because he's kicking away, and it is 1 minute and 1 second. And that was with not necessarily the best AI. The weird thing is, because I redid this fight multiple times with slightly different rotations, and we're going to see that it's 1 minute and 1 second again. And I'm going to do the fight again, with again, not necessarily the perfect AI rotation. And it's 1 minute and 4 seconds. And I'm going to do it again. And I think it's going to be 1 minute and 1 second again. So it was very weird or strange how consistent the time was, even if the AI wasn't perfect. And the reason for it is because the shock damage is working consistently in background, basically from the beginning of the fight. And again, it's 1 minute and 1 second. So it's not the fastest time. We do have tech champions that can finish this fight in like 40 seconds at rank 3 level. At the same time, I think one of the cooler things about using Shuri will be is because whether you use her against smaller health pool opponent or larger health pool opponent, as long as her abilities work, there will not be that much of a difference. As long as you're not in a class disadvantage, then there will be a difference because all of your shocks are less potent. But if you use her against tankier opponents, because of the way she ramps up and the damage works in the background, her fight duration shouldn't increase drastically. So I do think that Shuri will be good enough for Battlegrounds, not necessarily like, the best nuke. And I do think that she will be best suited for tricky metas where it's not necessarily, who nukes a fight down in 40 seconds. But I do think that with her, you will quite reliably be able to get like your 45 to 75, 80-second fights based on metas. Obviously, again, based on what rank level you have. So if I had a 7-star Shuri, I would be very, very, very happy right now because she undeniably has gone from a champion that's extremely hard to use well in Battlegrounds to a champion that is likely going to be quite popular in Battlegrounds, in my personal opinion. It obviously still remains to be seen, but it is significantly better. Still not going to be like Rocket or something like that, Hulkling that nukes everything down like 40, 50 seconds. But she'll definitely do much better. And even this fight as well with class disadvantage, everything else, she shaved up a solid half a minute of her fight time. So I do like her a lot better. Again, I do think she's an amazing 7-star pull. And that's like the only reason that's like making me hesitant to rank 4 my 6-star Shuri right now is because I'm hoping to pull her as 7-star. Either way, let me know what you guys think about Shuri's buff, but it is quite clear that, in virtually every single side-by-side comparison had fight times went down by like at least 30 seconds by a relatively significant margin. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I will catch you guys quicker. Bye. Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about